Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to be featuring the Nikon F-501 35mm film camera. Now this was Nikon's very first autofocus camera, and you can tell that because they marked AF on the side of the camera, and it was introduced in 1986. It didn't have much time on the market. It got pulled in 1989 and they continued making other cameras, no doubt putting more tech inside their SLRs for the future. And at the time Canon had already introduced their T80 camera, which they then replaced with the T90. But enough of the history lesson. I'm only spilling out to you guys what I'm reading on Wikipedia. It's all out there for you to research. This camera was found in an attic along with other cameras. You remember in my last video I made about the Nikon F5. This was one of those in the hoard that my mate Andy found in his loft. They was his granddad's cameras. And Andy gave them to me on a long-term loan so I can play around with them, shoot them, have a bit of fun and show you guys as well. But these cameras are no good just sitting dust in my cabinet, so I do intend to use them in the future. And this particular one I'm going to shoot for the very first time today. So before I carry on, let's just go over the camera and I'll show you all the little tiny bells and whistles that I found, apart from 3 program modes which completely confused me. And I never even use a program mode on any of my cameras, so I should imagine that made sense to someone back in 1986 if they purchased this camera with all the manuals and stuff. So over the years I've extensively used the Nikon F90X, and I instantly recognised one of the features on this camera that was carried over to that one, which is the focusing modes on the side. You've got manual, constant and single focusing. That seems to have been carried to the F90X. All the other stuff I don't recognise, so I've had to swat up and try and get used to it before I go out and shoot it. So let's start by looking at the front of the camera. What have we got? So right here, just in way of your little fingertips, you've got your auto exposure lock and also your auto focus lock as well. And just underneath that, you've got a little tiny red button, which is your timer, but you'd need to have a long fingernail or a little coin or something to press that, because just your butt of your finger ain't going to work. You need to dig in there and get it pressed. Once you've got the timer set, the little tiny red window or red light there starts flashing, gives you time to do your selfie. Now also on the front of the camera you've got your cable release function there. It's not your normal screw-in one, it's one of those electronic ones. Obviously I don't have one, but that's what that's for. And you've got your lens release button as well. On the top of the camera you've got your rewind crank and also your ISO selector as well. And also you've got your exposure compensation controls there as well, your little selector for that. There's also a little tiny red light which is for warnings. I'll come across those in a moment. And you've got your hot shoe as well. On the funky side of the top, which is over on your right where you press your fire button, you've got your shutter speed selector with those funny 3 program modes. I believe the program modes are for you to shoot higher shutter speeds. I don't know why. I would never use them, so I didn't look that great into them, but there is 3 program modes if anyone can be bothered to go in and start reading about it. I'm certainly not going to use them, but that's your shutter speed selector there, and it goes from bulb mode all the way to 1/2000th of a second. The slowest shutter you can shoot on this dial is 1 second. That's your shutter button there, and there's no screw insert for a normal release cable, so you have to use the electronic one. But that's your shutter release there for your finger. And also if you lift that little tiny clasp up, you can lock the shutter, or you can go into single firing mode or constant firing mode. And I believe constant firing mode is only 2.5 frames a second, so it's a lot different to the Nikon F5 I was shooting the other day. You've also got this little tiny switch on the top as well, which is for an audio warning beep. Now that'll only work if you're in auto mode and you start screwing up your aperture, the camera turns around and says, mate, you're going to be underexposed, and it will give out a little tiny warning for you to change your aperture settings, because in aperture priority mode. So that's what that does. Pretty handy, I find, for beginners, especially with this camera. If you've got that and it starts beeping at you, you straight away know that you've got to open up your aperture to get your exposure. Pretty cool. You've got your frame count as well, and also on this side you've got your rewind, and that really confused me because I put a test roll in and fired off 30 odd shots, and when I come to the rewind part, I thought it was going to auto rewind, and then I thought to myself, oh no, the camera's not working. So I slid it along, pressed the button, nothing was happening. I had to read up on that. There's no auto rewind function. You have to manually do it by the crank. So you slide that button, tab across, press the button, and then you start rewinding your film. And also on the back is this little tiny spinny thing. Now that will turn around as your film's advancing, and when you do come to the end of the roll and you start rewinding the film back, it spins along so you can see, and it will stop spinning just as the film comes off the take-up spool, if you like. It will just stop there, which is really handy if you want to save your own cassettes for bulk loading. Makes it a little bit easier as well to load on a reel, or if you're trying to rebrand at FOMA 100, you can reuse the cassette. And the viewfinder is really bright. On the right hand side you've got your shutter indicator. It will tell you what shutter speed you should be at and what shutter speed you are at. And it's also got a couple of arrows and a small green dot which tells you when you're in focus. And that's pretty much about it. Unlike the F5 that I showed the other week, that's a completely total different beast altogether, but this camera seems to be pretty simple to use. Let's go out. I'm going to load a roll of Ilford Ortho 80 inside, and I'm going to go out and shoot it for the first time and let you guys know how I get on with it. We'll come back and I'll show you the Right, so at the end of that piece of video I had a bit of a brain freeze, but I couldn't be bothered to re-edit it. I'm out on location now, so I've bought a camera. I'm going to go and find some red squirrels, which is up that way. My wife and daughter with me, they've gone up there to give them some peanuts. But there's the camera there. I've been walking for about 10 minutes and straight away I've noticed that this little grip, I find it really irritating. Look, you know, like I've got my fingers in there and they're sort of, they feel like they're getting blunt on it. It's just, like my other classic cameras, I suppose, hasn't got that, so you have to hold it differently, but I've been holding it like this all the way. I can't see the point of that grip, it doesn't seem to do much, but I'm just going to take a quick photograph here. So one thing I haven't checked out about this camera is the metering. I don't know what metering it's got inside. I suppose it's just going to be average metering like your normal cameras, you know. So, but I bought my Sekonic light meter out anyway just to test this, but I'm aiming to shoot this camera in auto mode, not program mode, auto mode, and you know, see how well it does. But I need to really make sure that the meter's working. I'm sure it is. All I need to do is a bit of incident reading here, and if the meter's coming out with the same, pretty much similar, it's all good to go. So I'm looking at this scene up here, which is not as well lit as it was a moment ago on that gate, and you'll hear the camera, if I try and focus on it, bleep, because I'm at F11. Silly film to put in really, an Ortho 80. That seems to be working all right. 60th of a second, F5.6. I just like the way these trees are arcing around. I need to hold this real steady, 60th of a second. Done. It doesn't feel like the F5 is a lot heavier, so when you're shooting those sort of slower speeds, 60, if you've got to hold your breath a little bit with this one, with that F5 I noticed it was so heavy and solid, it's pretty impossible to get any shake out of it. That's what I found anyway. So the squirrel eyes weren't open because of COVID, they've blocked it all off, you can't get down there. Oh well, never mind. I found a robin instead, little robin, threw a couple of nuts, he come down for the nuts. Tried to get a photograph and two joggers come past and scared them away. I don't know what's on that frame. I don't think I've got the robin, never mind.
So cute.
Come on then.
So I just took a shot of that tree this way, and as the film advanced, the little tiny rewind crank started going up my nose. Come on. Oh, slow coaches. They want to come with me. They're slowing me down. Getting nagged at now. So there's no red squirrel, so I thought I'd come down to the farm, take a few pictures. I've only got a few frames left, but a couple of maybe cow shots. I don't know, soon to see.
Go on. Just put your fingers out. It went. Actually, it might bite him, I don't know.
You're being brave, Em.
It was going to eat from me then. I'm not sure.
So even though that beeping was going off there, I couldn't get that shot. It was showing me it was 30th of a second, but I took the shot during the beeping. So obviously you can no doubt take photographs still. If it beeps, it's just warning you that you're probably going to be underexposed. Did you seriously just say that you're Auntie Emma to the cow?
Yeah.
So while Auntie Emma is still feeding those cows, I've just took the last shot on the camera and I wasn't too sure how it was going to tell me it was at the end. Now obviously with the F90X and the F5 that I've been playing with, it comes up end on the digital display. With this, little tiny red LED just starts bleeping at me. So I assume that's end of the roll. Here we go. I've been for ages now. So that was quite a fun little test going out with my family, just walking around the woods and going off into the farm. As for the camera, there's no faults with it at all. I couldn't fault nothing. The negatives came out really nice. I developed that Ortho 80 film in Ilford's ID11, 1 part to 1 part for 10.5 minutes, normal inversions, and the negatives look really nice. I scanned them using the VALOI 360 setup, which you can see a link in the description of my video. You'll get 10% off of that if you want to jump on there and purchase one of those. But other than that, the camera is mint. There's no light leaks. You know, the metering's working fine, all tickety-boo. And it makes quite a change for me to shoot in fully auto mode or aperture priority mode as I was with this camera. Usually I'm using my metering and trying to get the right metering for my shots, but I just relied on the camera and I came back with some decent photographs. And as for the little tiny audio beep that you get, which tells you to change your aperture because you're not exposed correctly, I think that's a genius idea, and I haven't seen it on any other Nikon cameras. My Nikon F90X certainly hasn't got it, and the F5 that I was shooting the other week, that hasn't got it either. I wonder why they got rid of it. But above all, I found this to be a fantastic little camera. The only gripe I've got is the grip. Like I said, I just feel that's a little bit strange in your hands. Like I said, your fingernails seem to be digging into it. I prefer that not to be there, but it is. What else can you do about it? Great build quality as you'd expect from a Nikon camera. And don't forget, this camera is 30 odd years old and it still works flawlessly, as you'd probably expect from a Nikon quality brand. And I didn't mention one thing, the batteries. It takes AAA batteries. I've got 4 of them underneath this little tiny plate. 4 AAA batteries. So that's me shooting the Nikon F-501, and I've got to say massive thanks to my mate Andy for letting me borrow it on a long-term loan. I do like it, I did enjoy shooting it, and I will shoot it again in the future. Let us know in the comments if any of you guys have got one of these or did have one of these, if you had any problems with it, what you liked about it and what you used it for. I'd like to know. Anyway guys, thanks very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to all the Patreons and the YouTube members and everyone else that supports the channel. I'll catch you next time.